Hey, I'm author Kate Messner, and First Chapter Friday today is All the Answers, a novel about a middle school girl who finds a magic pencil that will answer any question she writes with it. We're actually going to do the first two chapters. Chapter 1, The Opposite of Magic. The pencil didn't look magic. It looked the opposite of magic. It was the kind of pencil a parent might bring home from some boring financial planning convention. The kind nobody wants, so it gets tossed in the kitchen junk drawer and hangs out with random nails and bits of string and rubber bands. That's where the pencil was until the morning of Ava Anderson's math test. She was totally out of regular yellow number 2 pencils and had to go digging in the junk drawer looking for one. The pencil was bright blue with yellow lettering that spelled out EverQuest Innovative Research Solutions. Ava didn't know what that meant, and she didn't care. All she cared about was having a pencil for math, because if you showed up for Mr. Farkley's class unprepared, he gave you a look that could wilt a giant 300-year-old oak tree right down to the ground. And Ava was nothing like an oak tree. She was only 12. She had skinny arms and spindly legs and wilted easily. Big test today? Ava's dad hurried into the kitchen as she was dropping the pencil into her backpack. He opened the oven door, and black blueberry-scented smoke billowed out. Math, Ava said, waving at the smoke. Where are Graham and Mom? Graham's not up yet. She wasn't feeling well last night. And Mom had an early meeting with some bigwig client who wants to invest in oil futures. Dad pulled an overflowing cake pan from the oven. But don't worry, I've got breakfast covered. He juggled the hot pan to the counter and flipped it onto a plate. A charred something flopped out. Ta-da! It's the world-famous Anderson's General Store giant blueberry muffin. He looked down at the burned mega muffin. It might be a tad overdone. Ava poked through the charred crust with a spoon. It came out covered in batter. The middle's not burned. Dad sighed and took out the cereal as Marcus and Emma came downstairs. Emma wore an orange dress with blue and white striped tights and a name tag that read, "Hello, my name is Cleopatra." "There's only one E in Cleopatra, Ava told her. "I spell it with two," Emma said, and poured herself a bowl of cornflakes. Emma had worn a different magic-markered name tag to school ever since she learned she was one of 5 Emmas in her second grade, 3 of whom had last names starting with A. Instead of being Emma A2, she decided to use a different name every day. Her teacher said that was fine as long as she wrote her real full name on papers. "What's on fire?" Marcus asked, heaving his backpack onto the table. A coil of electrical wire rolled out and knocked over the cereal. "Dad's world-famous muffin." Ava brushed the spilled cornflakes into her hand. "I can't get them to bake evenly." Dad shook his head. "I thought for sure this was the one." "You think they're all the one," Marcus said. "Like your world-famous sweet pickle pie and your world-famous shrimp and jello salad." "I thought it would look cool, like the shrimp were swimming." Dad's smile drooped. "You'll come up with something, Dad," Ava said. Ever since it was on the news that Shop Mart would be opening a superstore in town, Dad had been obsessed with keeping the family general store alive. He figured if Andersons could be world famous for something, people would come from all over and bring their wallets and everything would be fine. The trouble was, pretty much all the reasonable world famous claims were taken by other stores in other towns. The dime store in Wakarusa, Indiana had world famous jumbo jelly beans. The Rainy Creek Country Store in Idaho had world-famous square ice cream cones, and Len Libby Candies in Scarborough, Maine, had claimed the world's only life-size chocolate mousse and the world's largest chocolate animal sculpture in one fell swoop. "I wish we'd thought of that chocolate mousse first," Dad said, scraping the last of the muffin mush into the garbage. There were moose in the mountains near Ava's town, so it would have been perfect, but you couldn't take somebody else's idea and make a slightly bigger moose. "We could have a chocolate owl," Ava suggested. Owl Moon was her favorite bedtime story when she was little. Mom had even taken her out to search for owls one night, just like the kid in the book. Ava never saw or heard one, but she still loved owls and tried to draw them. Mostly they came out looking like confused penguins. "Owls aren't big enough to be impressive," Dad said. "What about a chocolate bear? Or porcupine? Check online, see if that's taken." "I'll look after school." Ava pulled on a sweatshirt, picked up her backpack and saxophone, and started for the porch to wait for Sophie. "We could have a Jello moose," Dad called. "Bet nobody's done that." The screen door slammed, and it was like a switch flipped in Ava's brain, sending jitters all through her body and twisting her stomach. Time to worry about the math test. It wasn't because she hadn't studied. Ava knew the formulas for finding areas of circles and triangles. She'd understood the lessons and even helped Sophie with the homework. But Ava knew she'd forget everything once first period started, like she always did when a teacher plunked an exam in front of her. She'd stare at the questions, her sweaty hand wrapped around her pencil, her throat would get all dry. Then she'd have to cough, and Mr. Farkley was one of those teachers who scowled any time anybody coughed, like it was on purpose just to bug him. Teacher frowns felt like darts to Ava. She always ended up feeling strapped in her too small chair where she couldn't move and was doomed to sit quietly, blinking fast and chewing on her thumb, being darted to death while test answers slipped out of her head. Hey, Sophie called, jogging up the driveway with her gymnastics bag bumping against her side. How was your weekend? Pretty good. Ava swallowed hard, but the worries were already stuck in her throat. Are those new jeans? Yep. I went shopping with Dad and Jenna at the outlets. She spun around. Mom hates skinny jeans, but she can't really do anything because Dad got them for me. Sophie skipped ahead on the sidewalk through the red and yellow leaves. Let's hurry so we have time to hang out with everybody. You can go ahead, Ava said, pulling a few index cards from her pocket. I want to look over these math formulas. Didn't you study? I always study, Ava said, but as soon as I get near the math room, my heart gets thumpy and my face gets hot and I can't breathe and it's like I'm being smothered to death. Smothered in numbers. Sophie raises her eyebrows. I didn't know that could be fatal. It totally can, Ava said. Death by linear equations. Sophie laughed. You'll be fine. Just remember pi r squared. You can picture a square-shaped rhubarb pie with a big R on it. Come on. She grabbed Ava's hand and gave it a tug. Ava could never say no to Sophie. Sophie was the only reason Ava survived preschool. She'd taken Ava's hand and pulled her into the circle around the dress-up box to play. Ava never would have joined the group on her own. Back then, she'd been afraid of everything and everyone, not just math tests. Okay, it wasn't just math tests. She was also afraid of the goats and thunderstorms and getting in trouble and airplanes and her grandma dying and her parents getting divorced like Sophie's. Also, flesh-eating bacteria ever since she'd seen that one episode of Boston Med. Let's run, Sophie said, taking off. At least math was early in the day, so she could get it over with, Ava thought, as she raced down the sidewalk, too. Chapter 2 is called The Voice in Ava's Ear. Breathe in 4 counts, then out 4 counts. In 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4. Aunt Jayla, who was into yoga and meditation and other things Ava's mom called hippie hobbies, had told Ava about that breathing technique, in through her nose and out through her mouth, and said it would help her calm down, but it wasn't working today. All that nose breathing only made Ava notice the smell of sharpened pencils, which was like somebody screaming in her ear, "You have a math test, ha ha!" Is everyone prepared for class? Mr. Farkley looked up and down the rows, eyebrows ready to fly if he spotted some poor pencil-less person. Before we get started, I have forms for our upcoming field trip. Bring them back signed with your $10 by next week. Mr. Farkley walked up and down the rows of desks, dealing out permission slips. Ava glanced at hers before she slid it into her backpack. Adirondack Adventure Challenge was printed at the top in big dark letters. Below that was a photograph of a girl flying down some zip line thing with her mouth open, like she was screaming. Ava supposed that was meant to look like fun. It didn't. She stuffed the paper to the bottom of her backpack, down with the banana slime from when she forgot to take out her snack 2 weeks ago. All right, desks cleared. Pencils out. Brain sharp? Mr. Farkley dropped a test on Ava's desk. She swallowed hard and picked up her pencil. The first 4 problems were easy. Tess did that to trick you into thinking everything would be okay. But the 5th one made Ava's throat dry and squeezy. She should have reviewed those formulas on the way to school. What was Sophie's pie supposed to remind her of? Ava pulled the scratch paper from under the test pages and doodled all the maybes. Pi equals radius pi 3.14, pi r squared, 2 pi r squared, pi r, 2 pi r, pi r something else. The clock ticked. Ava's eyes burned. She blinked a few times, then squeezed them shut. She knew she was going to have to multiply something by something, and she was pretty sure pi was involved. Ava tried taking a few more four-count breaths. She drew some pies on her scratch paper for inspiration: apple, cherry. They were not inspiring pies. They were lopsided and lumpy and offered no help whatsoever. Ava doodled in big bubbly letters, "What is the formula to find the circumference of a circle?" And a voice said, 2 pi r. Ava jerked her head up. The kids around her were hunched over their papers working, as if no one had said or heard anything. But whoever answered her question hadn't even bothered whispering. It was loud enough that the whole class should have heard. "Ava?" Mr. Farkley was staring at her, eyebrows raised. "Is there a problem?" "No, sorry. I was thinking." She looked down at her paper and carefully, slowly, circled the equation, 2 pi r. Whoever answered her question was right. She remembered that now. So she did the problem, checked it over, and looked up again. The voice couldn't have been Sophie. She was way across the room. Luke Varnway was the only person sitting close to Ava, but the voice wasn't a boy's. It had sounded more like Ava's mom or Aunt Jayla. How come nobody else heard it? Ava took a deep breath. Maybe it was just like Aunt Jayla told her. If she could just calm herself down, the little voice in her head would give her the answer she'd studied. Maybe, after all the tests she'd bombed, her little voice had finally decided to show up. Well, it was about time. Ava took another breath and read the next question about the area of a circle. Was that one pi r or pi r squared or 2 pi r squared? Voice? Ava thought, I could use some help here. She waited, but the voice in her head had already gone. Come back, Ava said. Please? She tried writing down the question like she had before. Maybe she needed to see it on paper for her voice to kick in. She wrote, what is the formula for the area of a circle? Pi r squared, the voice said. It was back. But it wasn't in Ava's head. It wasn't her voice at all. It sounded like it was coming from someone right there in the room. Ava looked around again. How could nobody have heard? Ava made herself look down before Mr. Farkley saw her eyes wandering. She used the voice's formula to work out 2 problems. But the next questions were about triangles, and Ava couldn't remember the triangle stuff. So she wrote, how do you figure out the third side of a triangle? The voice said, that depends on what kind of triangle it is. You'll need to be more specific. Ava's mouth dropped open. She snuck a glance up at Luke, who was chewing his pencil, still working on the circle problems. He certainly wasn't the one talking to her. Ava looked back at her paper. This triangle had a right angle. She knew that. So she wrote, a right triangle. Ava waited. The clock ticked. One of those big, echoey, you are so running out of test time ticks. But the only voice she heard was Mr. Farkley's. 5 minutes until the bell. I'll take papers up here when you're done. A bunch of kids got up, walking past Ava's desk to drop off their tests. Come on, Ava thought. She tried again. What is the formula for figuring out the third side of a right triangle when you know the first 2 sides? If that wasn't specific enough, then the voice in her head was a big jerk. But apparently, her voice liked the new question. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, it said. This time, Ava didn't bother looking up. She wrote down the formula and figured out the problem with a minute to spare, then tucked her scratch paper in her backpack and added her test to the pile on Mr. Farkley's desk. How'd you do? He asked. Fine, she answered, like she always did. But this time, it was true. So that is the beginning of all the answers. You can check this book out of the library yourself and see what else is going to happen with that magic pencil. Happy reading.